So what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to go through a bunch of these different units. Hello, welcome to part number 2 of daily number 75, guys. Today we're going to walk you through the rest of the key power points in Zerg versus Protoss, general interesting points in unit interactions. So let's start out with Zergling damage, and let's take a look at a scenario here. Okay, so what we're going to see is 20 Zealots versus 80 Zerglings, and oops, I didn't want any. No attack upgrades, just charge, and what is this guy doing? He's just bludgeoning at the back. So what you'll find, I was talking about it before, Zerg always have pretty linear advancement in their upgrades. However, because the Zerglings only do 5 damage in attack, each melee upgrade is massive. A lot of units only get roughly a 10% damage boost with each upgrade, but Zerglings actually get a 20% for the first upgrade, and then slightly decreasing with each upgrade, because it's +1 damage out of 5, and then +1 damage out of 6. Obviously, it's slightly decreasing in percentage, but then Zerglings also have this amazing thing called adrenal glands, which gives 40% attack speed. So that actually amplifies all of your previous upgrades, which makes Zerglings the most ridiculous thing in the world. So here we've got +3 melee Zerglings with adrenal, going to be engaging on these Zealots, and these Zealots are literally going to disappear. Look at how fast they go away. Oh my god. Brutal. That is just insane. Now, how the hell is this balanced? And why is Zergling upgrades so imba? And this is something people always kind of ask me. The reason is because it takes a long time to get these upgrades. And by the time you get them, if the opponent is playing well, and the opponent is doing things correctly, your Zerglings will never get a nice engage like this. Instead, the engage is going to look much more like those ones where there's Archons, there's force fields. If you try to counteract their base, they're going to have a wall off. They're not going to give you the surface area like this for your Zerglings to wrap around and really use this insane damage. Also, your Zerglings, as they've only got 35 hit points, your opponent's going to have more splash damage. They're going to have more storm. They're going to just be able to deal with this much better. So Zergling upgrades are completely broken. They give the most insane damage boost in the entire game, but they are balanced through the fact that they're almost never going to get a scenario in the late game against a good player where they're going to actually get a chance to use that damage, because your opponent will always have either too much splash damage and the Zerglings will disappear before they can do damage, or they'll be running up against a wall or a choke point where they just can't get that surface area. Also, keep in mind, because they only get 1 damage a point, armor upgrades cancel out their attack bonuses. So if you've got +3 armor, it completely cancels out the attack upgrades, and only the adrenal kicks in. So armor upgrades are huge at reducing those ridiculous bonuses of damage that the Zerglings get as well. Of course, we've got a whole lot of other scenarios here, which we can talk about as well. Let's talk about a few of these key power points with units. So, if you've got Banelings. Oops, that's a drone, that's not a Baneling. Oops, I need more than 1 Baneling in order to show a scenario. Against a Zealot, and it's the same with an Adept. No upgrades for the Banelings. It's going to take 5 shots to kill a Zealot or Adept normally. Now, if we give those Zerglings, those Banelings, sorry, +1 melee, suddenly things are going to be nice for them. It's only going to take 4 Banelings, not 5. So, +1 attack, very nice for your Banelings. Of course, also, very nice for killing probes when you get +2, because if you don't get +2, then it is going to take you 2 Banelings to kill probes, leaving them on just a little bit of life. You get +2 attack, and they would actually have just one-shot those probes. So +1, very important for your Banelings against Zealots and Adepts, but also Stalkers. Something people don't realize is they will actually reduce the shots to kill Stalkers down, I believe it's from 9 to 8 Banelings as well, which is a cute little thing. In terms of Hydralisks, they just get gradual increases. Queens, 2 damage, they're a 2 attack damage unit, so if your opponent has more armor than you have attack upgrades, Queens just suck. Sorry, I just knocked my mic. Muters get a gradual damage increase as well, nothing crazy, but they suck versus armor upgrades because it bounces. Corruptors. Let's talk about Corruptors and what you usually want with those and how they work in game. So, Did I have a Corruptor? Don't think I saved a Corruptor scenario. No. Oops. Reset. Back. Clear. Let's go and show just how important Carapace upgrades are in the most common situations where you will see Corruptors. So, we've got a +3 Carapace Corruptor here versus Phoenix. So let's talk about the air kind of interactions on both sides. What you'll notice here is because the Corruptor starts with 2 base armor, it's already fantastic against units with 2 attacks, such as Phoenix and Carriers, because that armor modifier hits them twice. Because the Corruptors aren't heavy units, they're only meant to do 5 damage in attack. Because the Corruptor already has 5 armor, 2 armor, plus the 3, it means he's literally taking half a damage point per attack. So each Phoenix, when it shoots its 2 attacks, does 1 damage. And you can see the Corruptor here, if it's fighting a single Phoenix, it regens almost as fast as it's taking damage. As a result, if you ever outnumber your opponent with Carapace upgrades, your opponent's damage falls exponentially, and your Corruptors just get insanely out of control. So Corruptors are always going to be very important. He actually does kill that Phoenix, and I think he might kill the last one or almost kill it. However, you've got to remember that if you're not quite as far ahead of them in upgrades, say you've only got +2, you might think, well, you're still going to do really well, right? He'll only kill 1 Phoenix. Rather than almost killing 4 Phoenix, 1v4, suddenly, because those Phoenix are doing 5 damage a shot minus 4 armor, it's effectively double the damage those Phoenix are doing. They're doing 1 damage a shot times 2, rather than half a damage a shot times 2. And as a result, we see that Corruptor, he's going to kill 1 Phoenix, and then he's going to go down very shortly after. And the same thing, of course, happens against the Carrier, where a Carrier will still beat a Corruptor, I believe, with +2 upgrades. With +3, I'm not sure. But you see here, because the Interceptors do 5 damage in attack, same as the Phoenix, 2 attacks each, those Carapace upgrades are so important. So in most situations, Carapace upgrades are great. Because a Corruptor does do 20 damage versus Massive, getting those attack upgrades does give +2 per attack. Because it's still quite a slow attack speed, Carapace upgrades are almost always the favored upgrade with Corruptors. If they're fighting Void Rays, they probably will go for armor upgrades as well. But we see there a +2 Corruptor almost beats a 0-0 Carrier. Those upgrades are just insane. Okay, cool. Ultra vs. Mortal is the last Zerg one, which is kind of interesting. So let's take a look at this. So what we're going to see is an Ultralisk with +3 attack versus a 0 armor Immortal. So, alright, Immortal versus a +3 Chitinous Plating Ultralisk. Let's go. Now what you'll find here is that Immortal armor upgrades can kind of slow down an Ultra from killing them, but once an Ultra gets +3, it's going to take 10 hits. And now let's change it up. Let's give that Immortal 3 armor upgrades and 3 Plasma Shield upgrades. So it took 10 hits before when the Immortal had no armor upgrades. And now let's see how many hits it takes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Armor upgrades for an Immortal are completely inconsequential once your Ultralisk has +3 attack. Because this is something you will always see whenever a unit has a big amount of damage, it doesn't care about armor a lot. It just doesn't give a crap. There will be moments, like for instance, you'll kill them with 10 hits with +2, but then if the Immortal gets +2 ground armor, then it goes back to 11 hits. Like there's always this sort of interaction, but it's very like, yeah, it's never that massive, it's not that important. But once you get +3 attack with Ultras, armor upgrades just mean nothing. You could have invested 1,000 resources in ground armor and shield upgrades, or 2,000 resources, it doesn't matter. It's going to make absolutely no change. Now let's swap over to the Protoss side of things and actually take a look at that. Because the Protoss side, we do get a few more interesting unit interactions. So, let's start out with that Adept. And Adepts are interesting because they're such a common unit. Upgrades are not very important for them. And this is why we want to talk about this. So, let's go back to this. And what we want to start out with is an Adept versus a Hydralisk. That's a pretty common interaction, Adept versus Hydra. And what we're going to find here is that an Adept does not care about attack upgrades versus Hydras or Zerglings at all. It's always going to two-shot a Ling, no matter what, with that 22 damage. Doesn't matter if they've got +3 Carapace and you've got +0 attack. Doesn't matter if you've got +3 attack and they've got +0 Carapace. It just doesn't matter versus Zerglings. Against Hydras, the only time it matters is if Zerg has no Carapace, and if you have 1, 2, 3 attack upgrades. So it's pretty rare you're going to have +3 attack adepts and they're not going to have armor upgrades. But in case you do run into that scenario, suddenly you're actually going to kill the Hydralisk in 3 shots rather than 4, which is a very big boost. That's a big one. That's a big 25% boost. You know, that's pretty awesome. 4 down to 3, but it's something you're very rarely going to come across. Let's talk about Stalkers. Stalkers are an interesting unit. Now, let's fix up the upgrades. A Stalker will normally take one, 2, 3, 4 shots to kill a Zergling. However, if you get +2 weapons on that Stalker, suddenly that Stalker will actually 1, 2, 3 shot Zerglings. Now this is pretty big. 3 shots rather than 4 shots. Once again, a big 25% boost. So +2 with Stalkers against +0 Carapace Zerglings is actually quite massive. Talking to pro gamers about Carapace, the only time they mentioned Carapace as being potentially useful was saying, well, if Protoss are going to build a lot of Blink Stalkers, I might get Carapace level 1 to try and negate their +2 on the Stalkers. But they said, the thing is, Protoss aren't really using Stalkers much right now, and, well, Lings are already pretty good against them, so even if you don't have that upgrade to negate that, they all kind of felt like it's still an okay situation, because it's always going to be so tentative trying to push in with Stalkers against like Mass Zergling Baneling or Mass Ling Ravager. It's always going to be a little bit awkward anyway. What else is interesting with the Stalker? Versus Hydras, +3 is no different to +2. So that's important. So it doesn't matter if you get the +3 attack upgrade as opposed to +2. It doesn't really help you. It's just there for negating armor upgrades. But what about Stalkers versus Mutas? So the most important upgrade in Stalker versus Muta, let's get rid of these Flyer Carapace upgrades so that doesn't throw anything off, is going to be +1. +1 is actually super key. If you don't have +1, then you are going to struggle. Oh. Did I just load a Stalker vs. Muta game where there's no Muta? I think I did. Okay. What a save. Oh man. Okay, so I gotta load this while I've got it open. There we go. It can be a little bit awkward doing this sometimes. There we go. One Mutalisk is now out. Muta's gonna come. It's gonna try and fight, and the key number is 11. If you don't have +1 though, 11 Stalkers will not kill it. You will need 12. So it's not the biggest upgrade, but it is something to keep in mind. If you've got +1 Stalkers, then suddenly, as long as you kill it within about a second and a half before it gets a chance to regen extra hit points, it will just take those 11 shots in order to one-shot it. And what's important is +2 does not help at all with Stalkers versus Mutas in this scenario. Unless the Mutas are going to be really weird, freaky Mutalisks that decide to go for armor upgrades, which you never see, it doesn't matter. Of course, as I was mentioning before though, Mutas when they're facing strong ground armor upgrades really suck. So if you've got really strong ground or plasma shield upgrades, that really wrecks the bounce of Mutas. So that can actually be just as effective at kind of negating the damage of them. There are a few other little scenarios. There's a few cute ones, which I will run you guys through. So Archons. Clear. And for Archons,